Hi guys, and welcome to another video here on the Aliato YouTube gaming channel. Today we continue our series where we break down individual positions on the pitch and what to look for from players that play in those positions. Today we are covering centre backs. So we're going to load up our save here in San Marino. Now, like I said in all my videos, a lot of this advice is based around the lower league sort of saves on Football Manager, but it's not just specific for there. If you move up the footballing pyramid, things will slightly change. You could probably be a bit more picky with your centre backs, but we're basically focusing on non-league, particularly in San Marino here, where everyone is an amateur player. And if you're wondering why we're loading up San Marino, this is actually our Twitch save, which we stream over on twitch.tv/Aliato. The idea is to build up the nation, to go from amateur to semi-pro to professional, and to build up the national team. So here today we've got our club side, and we've got, as you can see, our tactics set up here. We're just going to go through the centre backs and kind of things to look forward to, and what to do with your tactics to make the best of what you got, and to utilize the strengths and basically cancel out their weaknesses as much as you can, because obviously at this level you can't have everything. You just got to try and make the most of what you got. So we load up our first centre back. As you can see, he is a star player. He's probably one of the best players in our team. He's got some really nice attributes here. The yellows are very good for this level. Even 9s and 10s are pretty decent. So as you can see, he is a very good defender. Now, as you can see, he's got some very good strengths, and he hasn't got any critical weaknesses. Anticipation's probably the lowest on there, and probably the one you want to kind of focus on and try and avoid. As you can see, he's good defending, he's got good bravery, he's good jumping reach, and obviously he's quite tall. He's not good at dribbling. His first touch is okay. His passing's not too bad, but it's not really quite enough to suggest he's a ball-playing defender. So with this guy, as you can see, he's right-footed, and if you go over to the player sort of I'm not sure positions on the player card here. If you hover the mouse over, it will tell you if they've got a side preference. So obviously, if they do, you try and play the players and what they prefer. It's not critical, but it's useful to kind of just keep a tab on there. So on here, there's nothing particularly tactical wise that you would pick up on. He's very good at everything. He's got pretty good decisions. I would say you probably want to have him tightly marked because of his pace and because he's quite tall. I would say you probably want to have a balanced or maybe a slightly lower line for your defence. Now, obviously, it depends on your other defenders and your goalkeeper. So what we do on this guy is we do have him man marking, and we do have him up for corners on set pieces, because we do flick the ball into the box. Now, obviously on your set pieces, they're a great way of scoring goals, particularly in lower league. Now, if you haven't got a good set piece taker, or you play your corners short, for example, then there's no point sending this guy up, because while he's good in the air, he's not really going to, finish the ball if the ball's on the deck, so to speak. So bear that in mind when you're doing your set pieces, what you're doing with your centre backs, and what the critical way you want to play. If you're committed to doing short corners, then on defenders you don't really need to worry too much about the height, as long as they're quick and you can have a higher line of engagement to compress the pitch down. So if the best defenders you can get are maybe not quite great, tall or great in the air, but they are quite quick and they've got good anticipation and positioning, then go for the higher line. And then it doesn't matter too much about them not being effective in the air if you're playing the short corners. So obviously what you can do as well, go into the coach report. Now, one of the things you do want to look out for is consistency in centre defenders, because you're not asking them to be particularly skillful in matches, but you want them to be consistent. You want them to make the good decisions, the basic decisions, and not basically make mistakes, because the centre defender makes a mistake, it's more than likely to be a goal. Same with your goalkeeper. As you can see, he's got a lot of good pros in here. He's good in the air, which we've just spoke about. Can improve a lot. Now, he's an amateur, so unfortunately, that's not going to be something we're going to be able to make the most of unless he stays and we do go semi-pro, but we'll see. As you can see, poor technique, so we don't play the ball to our defenders in this tactic because none of them are particularly proficient on the ball. He's fairly slow, so again, like I said, slightly lower line of engagement because most of the attackers he's coming up against are going to probably be quicker than him, and his anticipation and positioning are good, but they're not amazing. So you let the opposition play in front of you and let them try and get past you, which utilises his strengths and weaknesses here. Can only play one position, that's fine. Centre backs generally they don't have the quality to play in other positions other than maybe a fullback. But obviously, you can do what we did in the other video, which I'll show you in a minute, to see if they could play in a different position. He's very one-footed. Most centre backs are. That's fine. And to be more consistent, if he's to develop further, now that's about his potential. As you can see, he is very good for us at the moment. His current ability, so that's not really too much of a concern. Now, if this was a one-star player with a five-star potential, then obviously that's more of a concern because there's question marks about if they are actually going to reach that potential. Whereas he is already good enough, so if he doesn't really improve in the future, it's not too much of a problem. And in fact, if he doesn't improve so much, it improves your chances of retaining him, particularly as an amateur club. So as we did on the other video, if you go into your training, because this is the best way to scan and see if he could play in a different position, you can select your different roles here. So because he's tall, he's not particularly quick, I don't foresee him playing in another role, but you could always go to sort of a fullback on defend on here and sort of have a look here and say, well, he's okay, but he's really not utilising his strengths here at all, and it's asking him to do things that he isn't particularly great at, particularly the crossing and things like that. Now, one of the other positions you could say you could play is, could he be sort of an anchor role and play ahead of the back four? Now, as you can see here, he's not too bad. He's not too bad. It does take away his heading, but as you can see, he's got decent stamina and work rate. So what I'm thinking is, instead of an anchor, which is a bit more of a static position, is if you go to a ball winning. Now, as you can see, he's got good bravery. He's actually got good composure. So he could, if he could get his passing and these stats up a little bit, he could definitely play with the ball and maybe play further up the pitch. But as you can see, he doesn't really utilise his jumping reach and his heading, which is obviously a big strength of his. Now, the other crazy one you could do is, could he be a target man? And you go up here, and now obviously his finishing is pretty poor, but there is sort of some potential here. His anticipation, particularly as his forward, is quite important. So there isn't really much here, and obviously nothing I'm going to explore. Obviously the finishing is not great, but potentially, I'm just wondering actually, could you do a pressing forward and utilise the work rate, which I've noticed down here, and his tackling, which maybe that's on defend? No, maybe not. Okay. But anyway, this guy is definitely a centre back. But it's always worth just looking at players that, sometimes if they don't quite tick all the boxes for the position that they are trained in and naturally trained in, maybe just look around, particularly if they're players that, if you're a contracted club and you can't get rid of them, they're taking up wages, just have a look around, just see if you maybe retrain them to a different position, because you'll be quite surprised. Sometimes, players are actually better in positions that they've never played in before. Not always the case, but it's always worth looking into. Now we're going to look at our other centre back, his partner here, who isn't quite as good as him, and we are looking to improve on this position. But as you can see, again, very tall centre back. Now, most centre backs in lower leagues are going to be very tall and very slow. It's not always the case, but generally speaking, that's the profile that you're going to work with. So I generally in my tactics don't have the line much further up than standard. and we invite crosses. So basically, teams can send the ball into the box, and these two, as long as they've got decent marking, decent positioning, as you can see, 16 jumping reach at 194. He is going to win everything in the air. He's got good aggression, he's got good heading, everything like that. The bravery is a slight concern, and it's slightly surprising considering he is so tall. But this is the way it can go in Football Manager. Now, obviously, with these two, they're very tall, they're very strong in the air, so you definitely want to send both of these up for your set pieces and utilize that. So, playing for set pieces is a good way to tick on your tactic if you've got these two centre backs, and make sure that your fullbacks stay back, and you probably want a third on stay back if possible, or stay back if required. Now it depends on the profile of your players and things who that is. So sometimes it'll be a holding midfield, sometimes it'll be a centre mid, sometimes it might even be a winger. But obviously, if you do have an attacking player come back on corners, they need to be quite defensively switched on. So if you're playing the ball into the box aerially and you're going, okay, this guy on the wing can't header, he's no good, he can't take the set piece, may as well have him back. Well, it's great having him back, but if he isn't very good positionally, then he's maybe not that effective in that role. So you might want to put him on edge of the box and maybe look for a different player to stay back if required. Now, as you can see, his first touch and his passing is pretty decent. So there is a case to be made that actually your centre backs here could play the ball out of defence. And it is something that we will probably tinker with in the next few games and see how that progresses, because playing the ball out we do quite well, but I feel like it could be better. But because we've not selected a particular instruction for that, it means now we watch it in game, we can make those little tweaks and just see how we perform. Now, obviously, if we give the ball up too easily, then it'll be something that we look to take off, or it could improve our basic way of getting the ball up the pitch, which at the moment is fairly direct to the wings. But our wingers aren't particularly tall; they are quick, and that's where we're getting a lot of our joy. However, we are going to look to uh, play maybe the ball out from our centre backs, because our fullbacks aren't particularly great on the ball. It's a strange mix that we got here, where our fullbacks are pretty decent. However, they're not crazily good on the ball, and I'd say our centre backs are probably better with that. So, tactical instruction I would say is play to the centre backs and get them to play the ball out. Like I said, he's very good in the air, so I would say invite the crosses, or see how that goes. I'd certainly say trap out wide. So, the opposition are probably going to send the ball into the box, and then you've got really good jumping reach here and things like that. The other thing to consider is obviously your centre backs are going to be winning the headers if they are sending the ball into the box, but where's that ball going to go? So if you've got a very high line of centre mids and things like that, then chances are they're not going to be there to receive the second ball. And if they've got an AMC, then he's going to have a field day with that, because the ball's going to be dropping to the edge of the area, maybe slightly further out, and he's going to have a very good opportunity to play a pass or have a shot. Obviously, if you've got like a holding midfielder or someone like that, then it'll work much better, because he can be switched on and retrieve the second ball and then look to launch a counter attack. So as you can see, he's got good stats here. He isn't particularly strong, and he hasn't got great bravery. So the thing to consider is, if you're doing opposition instructions like I do, and you look on bravery at the opposition players and going hard, because the 5 bravery is quite low, it might not actually be the best way to go about tackling opposition. Now, what you can do is put a playing structure on this player to say ease off tackles, which we haven't done, but it's something that we are considering doing at the moment. As you can see, the pace isn't great either. The other centre back isn't particularly quick either. So our defenders are a similar profile. So that line, having it further back, suits basically our back four. Going to coach reports again. Jumping reach, consistent performer. Again, that's what you want from your centre backs. Good international. Sorry, is a current international because he's San Marino. He's good in the air, enjoys big matches. So this is really good. This is stuff that you want to see on your centre back. Now, What you don't want to see is the performance training not being great. As you can see, he tends not to get stuck into rough challenges. So particularly as he's picked it up as well, I would say you want to have that on your play instruction, not to get stuck in or to ease off the tackles. Selfish player, I mean, he's a centre back. He's not going to go dribbling. Um, just he's going to play the ball out fairly simply. And I've not really seen that come to fruition or any red flags when I've been watching our games. So that doesn't concern me too much. Obviously, if he's further up the pitch, then selfish player does come a bit more into it. Secondary group of the social, that's not too bad. Improve his ability in the air. I mean, I think he's, considering he says he's good in the air, it's a bit of a contradiction there. And again, this goes to your staff levels now, because we're an amateur club. They're not great, so you can take a pinch, take what they say with a pinch of salt at times. Can only play one position and is very one-footed. Now, like we did with the other player, he's got no side preference, so you can play these either side. They are both right-footed, um, so that's the way it goes. And in terms of looking at this guy and seeing if he can play anywhere else, um, like the other centre back, I don't really see anything going here. His jumping reach is by far his best ability. 16 at this level is crazy. So to make the use of that is centre back or possibly a target man. Now, he could actually be fairly useful here, but let's have a look. Now, the bravery again is a bit of a disappointment, and he hasn't got the great strength. He hasn't got a good balance, so you need that to basically hold off other players. Now, if you're a target man, you really need to be able to do that. So, sadly, while he's got good heading and jumping reach, he isn't quite good enough to consider that. So, we're going to just stick him back as a defender, and what we are going to do is just get him. We'll leave the individual because there isn't anything I believe at the moment that includes your bravery, and particularly at this level amateur setup, the attributes aren't going to grow crazily over any period of time, unfortunately. But for the time being, he's okay. But we will criticise his training performance. So if we go and have a look at some other defenders, this is our backup. It's a youth guy again. So his jumping reach is really poor, but he isn't particularly great. So the problem you're going to have here is if you have a deeper line, he's going to be very susceptible to aerial battles. As you can see here, he's 179 centimeters in height, which is very short for a centre back, particularly with the 7 jumping reach, the 6 strength, and the 8 bravery. It's not particularly great. Now, to basically try and mask this, you could have a higher line of engagement. However, his anticipation and positioning is okay, but it's not amazing, and his pace isn't particularly great either. So he could potentially play in a higher line, but you would probably want to work on his pace. Now, with that in mind, I am going to say on his training, we definitely want to get him working on his pace. So it is here somewhere, quickness. There we go. So basically with the higher line, because you're not necessarily taking so many aerial balls into the box and things like that, you won't have to worry too much about his strength as much. It's more about his marking, his positioning, his anticipation. Basically perceiving how the play is going. If there is going to be a ball over the box, then he knows to drop back, or if he wants to play him offside, then he can step the line up. So hopefully he can prove this. He is 16, and he is Samarisian, so that's why we're persisting with him. The other thing we can do, because of his height not being great, I've noticed he's got good natural fitness and he's got good tackling and work rate. So I think potentially a position in midfield might be better for him. So the first one is box to box. Now, as you can see, his passing's not great, his finishing's not great, his first touch is not great, his dribbling's not great. So basically, and his long shots. So going forward, he is not great in the final third. You probably don't want him up there. So what about a ball-in midfielder on defend? Now, as you can see, he's got good tackling, he's got good pace. His aggression needs a bit of work on. However, this is probably a more suited role for him It doesn't necessarily take account his natural fitness, but he's got fairly good work rate there, and his balance um, is not being quite utilised there. However, it's up to you to decide, is this a better fit for him than playing centre back? The other role, obviously, you could play is potentially a fullback. Now, why he has got the ability to get up and down the pitch, as you can see, he's not great in the final third, and that's asking for a lot of development for him to be effective in that sort of role. So I would say that you probably don't want to train him as a fullback at this point now, because obviously we're amateur. The improvement in players isn't going to be drastic. So we are probably going to look to have him playing somewhere in the pocket. I'd imagine probably an anchor, something like that. So he is not in the back line, but he is a very defensive minded player, and he can utilise more his tackling and his good stats there, which is like his balance and his work rate and things like that. So in terms of the tactics, like I said, what we'll do is have a slightly lower line of engagement. We will, because we change the tactics largely to the opposition. So when it comes to an opposition game, you have the next match only, and then most of the time in transition, out of possession, we will trap outside, and then potentially one of these two as well, depending on who they got in the box. If they got a target man, you still want to stop the crosses. If they've got a very short striker, for example, then you probably want to invite the crosses, because the old defenders are going to win that every single day of the week. And usually our main goalkeeper, is very good in the air as well. But unfortunately, he's injured at the moment, so our backup keeper isn't quite as good. So that's something worth bearing in mind. And that's basically it. Like I said, one of the things we are probably going to do with this is in transition, we are going to distribute to the centre backs, because they are actually quite good with the ball, and that plays in with the synergy of play out defence. So, those two Macs are up. They don't basically contradict each other, which is the important thing to do in tactics, which is why I always say you probably want to have less instructions and build your tactic up for that way, rather than throw all the instructions at the wall and hope most of it sticks, basically. So in terms of tactics with what to do with your defenders and things like that, there isn't too much else here to consider. Obviously, you've got the defensive line options here. We don't want to drop off more, because at this level, you can concede a lot of goals from long range shots. So we don't want to invite that too much. Basically, as well, is we are already trapping them outside, so that does well for us. So we don't really need to change that too much. Obviously, keep an eye on how you're conceding goals, and that might be an instruction worth looking into and utilising as well. And the other thing as well is obviously personal player instructions. So we looked at this guy and we noticed that his bravery isn't great. So I would say he's off tackles. What's his marking like? It's 10. Yeah, good positioning 10. It's good, but it's probably not quite enough to go mark tighter all the time. And then we'll go on to the other guy here. And again, his vision's not great, his passing's not great, so you want to say take fewer risks. And what's he like? His bravery's pretty good, got good aggression, so I would say tackle harder for sure. But keep an eye on that, because obviously if he keeps picking up yellow cards or conceding too many fouls, then that's something you want to take off. And the other thing as well is marking positioning is pretty good, but I'm going to leave that off for the time being, because we use opposition instructions every individual game, and seeing what the opposition pose in terms of goal scoring threat, and then picking things around that. So I think that's today for the centre backs. That's basically what to look forward to. Obviously, as you move up the footballing pyramid, you can expect a lot more from your centre backs. They can do a bit of everything. They can play with the ball. They can, if they're a bit quicker, then you can obviously send the line of engagement further up the pitch. Now, obviously, it is the meta in Football Manager that you have a high line, you do the gegenpress and the counter and everything like that. But if you want to kind of put a bit more realism into the game, then obviously you can utilize that with the back line and where you have it. I don't have it generally any further back than lower, because I find that if you're watching the game, they are literally on the 6 yard box, and it's an absolutely ridiculous line. So my standard there might be a bit concerning with the lack of pace there. Actually, if you're watching game, they actually keep a fairly sensible line of engagement. They don't leave any space in behind, but they're not on top of the goalkeeper. So if you're building a tactic, that's something that's worth looking into, is having the full highlights, or extensive or extended, basically, just to see how, what your defenders are doing in the possession and out of possession, and then putting the tactics and the individual instructions to counter what you're seeing, basically. Anyway, guys, let me know what you do with your centre backs, what you look for. Have you had any really good centre backs in FM24, particularly in lower league? Then please let me know in the comments. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.